Okay, so this is what you're going to need. Firstly, you'll need a mannequin head and somewhere sturdy to place it. I've got it on a clamp here on my kitchen sideboard. Some tinfoil. I have ripped them into small rectangles, nothing fancy, and I've got this from a kitchen roll of tinfoil. An old comb, wide tooth comb, mine's a bit battered. A pintail comb, so with the pintail on the end, and maybe some brushes, so little sort of blending brushes. I've got a thin one there and a rather large one. I tend to use a large one more so, and a mascara brush if you choose to use that. I don't think I will, but it's there if you need it. Some clips, some sectioning clips, and some butterfly clips, whatever you've got handy, and a mixing bowl, plastic mixing bowl with a brush, an application brush. So there we are, that's what we're going to need. And then the colours that I'll be using is the Live Urban Metallic Dusty Silver, colour U72. So I'll be using some of that. And also I'll be using the Nice and Easy by Clairol, and this is Nice and Easy Cream. This is in colour 8A, and that's ash blonde, medium ash blonde. And then also I'll be using Colour Freedom Blondes, the white blonde formula, and this is to neutralise the yellow and brassy colours in the unit. So they're the three colours that I'll be using throughout this process. So here is the unit on the mannequin head now, and it's, as you can see, it's rather quite yellowy blonde. I've pinned it to the head with T-pins, and I've pinned on the front part of the lace where I haven't cut the lace, so there's an excess lace, and I've pinned that on to the excess lace so not to damage the monotop. So two at the front, and I've also pinned one at the back into the weft just to hold it down when I'm lifting the hair to colour it. So it's nice and secure on the mannequin head now, so that I can move the head around as I need to without the unit slipping off. So there we are. Next, I'm going to give the unit a good comb through. We want to try and make sure that the hair is well combed and separated. So I'm just giving it a nice comb through here in preparation to section it out. So what I'm doing here is I'm working from the crown of the head, and I'm taking a diagonal section so that I can section it into three sections, three separate sections, two at the front, one at the back. So I'm just taking a diagonal section there from the back, giving it a good comb through, and then I shall pin that into a separate section, just using my sectioning clips there. And then I'll continue to do the same for the other two sections, so just giving it a comb through, making sure that it's nicely separated, the hair, and comb through so we've got no tangles for the colour to get mixed up in and blotchy, because this can happen when the hair is tangled. It can get quite blotchy. And this is the advantage of having a mannequin. You can move the head around so that it's easier to maneuver whilst you're colouring, because obviously even though you're wearing gloves you still tend to get a little bit of colour on the hands, and you don't want that getting onto the hair as you move the hair around. Okay, so that's the mannequin there with the hair sectioned into three sections, ready to start colouring. And obviously we're colouring onto dry hair. So it's time to mix the formula. So of course we're going to need some gloves. These are kind of really important, otherwise you can end up with really dirty dyed fingers and fingernails. So popping on the gloves, take your mixing bowl and your brush, and this is the Clairol Nice and Easy 8A medium ash blonde. I'm going to use the whole of this tube. So you just take off the lid and poke the hole through so that the formula comes out, and then pop it all into your mixing bowl. So this ratio is it's not measured, it's kind of a guessing game with me. I don't advise that you guess the ratio. I simply just do because I have done for years. And then the live U72 Dusty Silver, I'm using a quarter of this tube, so you can see all the other formula in the bowl there, and then I'm just going to add a quarter of this tube, so a little bit less. So basically the ash blonde is a great color, but when you put it on to 613, I've found that it tends to go green, so I add a little bit of Dusty Silver to the formula just to keep that grey ash color in there. That's what I've found by experimenting, but only by experimenting. And then we're going to take the developer. So I'm using the developer that came in the box with the Clairol Nice and Easy 8A. I'm going to use that formula and then give it a little shake, take off the lid and place all the developer into the bowl. Just make sure that you've got it all out of there. And then we just need to give it a good stir. So when you're stirring the formula, you can use a little whisk. I kind of misplaced mine, so I'm using my brush. And it's a case of really giving it a good stir. You want to make sure that all the lumps are gone, that both the formulas, both the dyes are mixed in nice and equally. So stirring until you're happy that you've got a sort of a cream-like consistency. So you can sort of pull the brush out and it just drops off little creamy kind of droplets. It does take a good stir here. Like I say, a little whisk usually does the job really quite well. So there you can see that the formula is nice and whisky. Sorry, it's nicely stirred and mixed, and it's creamy, not whisky. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so we're ready to go here. Now this next section is quite lengthy because I'm going to take you through the process step by step in the back section, and then I'll speed it up for the rest of the colouring. So what I'm first doing is I'm taking the section and putting a light amount of colour on the brush, and I'm going along the bottom edge of the hairline, so underneath. It doesn't matter if you get it on the actual base of the monotop, the material of the base, that really doesn't matter. So I'm just putting a light covering, and it's about an inch from the attachment where the hair is, an inch to an inch and a half. So I'm just going along the bottom line here. Now remember, when we're smudge rooting or balayaging, the great thing about this technique is that we don't have to be really technical. So just try and be mindful whilst you're moving the hair around that you don't catch the brush or dip the hair into the bowl or any of those things. So now what I'm doing is I'm going along the edge of the side of the section and trying to get as close to the actual attachment of the hair, so the root, if you like, as much as possible. But what I am doing is I'm leaving a very small section right at the top where I'm not putting the dye yet. So just be really mindful whilst you're doing this to try and keep it as close to the scalp, if you like, as you can, but avoid getting it onto the lace or the actual sort of join where you've made the section, but you want to get it as close as you can. So I'm just going over the other edge, other side now. And then what I want to do is start to section off smaller sections of the hair. So you might get a little bit of arm ache here because I tend to hold the hair up. There's lots of different methods of doing this, and again, mine is not a professional method. Mine is just what I've done and found my way around by experimenting. So I'm taking a small section from the bottom just sectioning off with my pintail comb. You might see me throughout use my brush pintail as well, because that's easier than swapping things around all the time. So what I will do here is hold up the remaining hair and just try and find the best section that I can. Generally, when you're working in the wefted section, it's easier because we can actually work to the wefts, so where the weft line is. And then I'm again just taking small amount of colour onto the brush to ensure I'm not really piling it on. And then starting at the weft, right at the top of the hair, and just applying the colour here. And again, just taking it down maybe 2 inches this time. And first I'm flattening the colour onto the line of hair. But what I will also do is turn the brush sideways and create little strokes with the colour as well. So basically what I'm trying to avoid there is having a squared block of colour. So I will first make sure that I am getting all of the line of hair, and then I turn my brush sideways, if you see there, and I do little strokes down the hair. So I'm taking it maybe a little bit further down. Always try and visualize what you're trying to achieve. You know, with natural hair, with the color on natural hair, the color is sort of blended into the hair. It's not just a block of color. So now what I'm doing is the hair that's lifted up, I'm just applying a small amount of color, probably 1 inch to 1.5 inches from the root. I'm not really piling it on here. I'm just getting the underneath in preparation to doing the top. And again, taking another section and just making sure I'm getting into the grooves there from the root. And trying to be mindful that what I'm trying to do is create a kind of a triangle shape, if you like, an upside down triangle. So I'll go a little bit deeper down the hair as I come more to the center of the hair. So it is a fiddly process, and like I say at the beginning of the video, it's a good idea to have a good practice with these techniques. Again, I'm not fully trained in doing this. This is all about trial and error and lots of practice. So I'm just taking small sections and working my way down the sections, applying the colour. And you will find with hair on a unit, a topper, that you will need to keep an eye on hair snags and hair catching on the brush. And obviously, like I say, got a little bit of arm ache holding the hair up here. The reason I'm holding it up is because I don't want the hair that I've coloured around the sides to stain the non-coloured hair at the moment, because I want to try and keep the top free, and I'll show you why when we get there. So again, just making sure I'm doing long strokes down, just trying to blend the colour in. Now I've taken my blending brush and I'm just on the edges of the colour at the bottom. I'm just trying to lightly blend it in. I don't want to apply too much pressure there because I don't want to sweep the colour off the hair, but I do want to use that brush just to smudge it and blend it. And again, the top layer, I'm just going around the edges 1 inch to 1.5 inches, just applying a small amount of colour there so that the bottom of my section that I'm about to take is coloured. And then using my brush, the pin tail of my brush, to pull down the next section. So again, just taking your time with this. Just try and get it as neat as you possibly can. So on this section here, starting from the root and working my way down, creating those long lines with a side on brush, because we really do want to try and avoid that squared off colour where it'll be darker and then it'll stop on a very sharp line and then it'll be light. So we're trying to blend that in by using this side brush technique. And keep an eye on those snags of hair. I really try and attempt to get into the real root here underneath. We don't want a line of blonde at the top and then black and then dark and then blonde. We don't want to do that. We want to try and keep that colour running from the root. Okay, and taking my little smudging brush and again just giving it a little smudge over there, just on the ends, just brushing it down lightly, and hopefully the smudge brush will just blend it in that little bit better. And repeating again on the next section, just taking the small amount of colour and 1 inch to 1.5 inches. The closer you get to the top, the more wary you have to be of doing the underneath, because you don't want the colour to seep through in blobs to the colour, to the hair that's not coloured yet. Pulling down my next section. So you can always fast forward through these bits if it's all getting a bit too much watching the same thing over, but I do change what I'm doing very shortly, so be aware of that. I will fast forward the video or speed it up when we move to the sides, because it's exactly the same principle on the sides as it is at the back. Just wanted to show you in detail of what I'm doing here. Okay, so again, just from the root, get the initial colour on and then work in side stroke motions. Obviously you can take the colour as far down the hair as you wish. Just through my experience, the more dark roots you put on, then the darker the unit will be from the top of the head downwards. And sometimes I've enjoyed that in some units. I do have units that are slightly darker further down. This time I wanted to keep as much blonde as I possibly could. Again, just taking my little smudge brush, giving it a smudge there. This is just a makeup brush. Okay, what I'm doing now is I'm taking a sheet of tin foil and I'm going to lay that tin foil on the colour that I've already done, ready for my next section, because what I want to start doing as I get closer to the top of the head is actually making some little blonde highlights. Now this is a real trick that I've taught myself. Obviously, because we can't bleach the hair, I want to try and keep some of the top of the section blonde, like little highlights. So what I'm doing is I'm taking a smaller, thinner section and just pulling that over the foil for the moment, because what I would like to achieve here is to have some sections of blonde left out. So I'm pulling a thinner section there and then allowing the hair that I've been holding to just fall softly over the top. And then I'm going to take that thin section and I'm going to weave my pintail comb through the section, just gathering small pieces. So weaving it in and out, in and out, in and out. So I've got finer highlights. So rather than bleaching highlights here, we're actually taking highlights and bringing them out of the hair so we can keep them free. And then the hair that's rested on the tin foil, I'm going to do the same as I've done before, from the root and down, just colouring that there. Again, getting the block colour on initially and then turning the brush sideways so that I can blend it in better. And just making sure that you're keeping the colour on the brush nice and fine, that you're not using too much blobby colour, and then giving it a little smudge with the brush. And then I'm going to place another piece of foil on top of that. Take it right up to the root and then pull the highlighted sections over. So what we want to do here is we want to try and keep as much of this hair blonde as possible. So I'm taking a tiny bit of colour and just applying literally a couple of millimeters from the root. We want to keep it at just a couple of millimeters. Using maybe your smaller brush if you feel more comfortable using your smaller brush, or you can carry on using the larger brush, that's up to you. So I'm going to use my larger brush because I think what I realised there is that I hadn't actually cleaned my smaller brush, so I didn't want any of the powder coming off that brush. So just a tiny little smidge, and then this is the tricky bit. You're taking the dry blonde highlights and you're wrapping them in the tin foil to keep them out of the way of any colour. Because remember, we can't bleach the hair, so we want to try and keep these highlights free from colour. And I'm just folding and packaging that hair away. And then placing another piece of tin foil on top of that, again just to extra protect that blonde hair. And then we resume the normal practice that we've been doing so far. So as you get closer to the top of the head, again you want to be really careful of not letting the colour seep through to the top of the head. So a bit more control is needed here. So you can see I've let the hair I'm not colouring fall away as I do the bottom. Nice light coating there on the back of the section. And then pull that section over the tin foil. And then I'm going to, again, from the root, just colour a sort of couple of inches worth of pyramid shape into the hair. So what I mean by pyramid shape is kind of from the root, and then at the sides I'm drawing it down on a side brush. So I'm creating the blending effect. So just using the side brush there. So basically turning the brush on its side so you can create little kind of swifty actions with your brush and then blend with the blending brush. And then lifting the hair once again and taking these sections nice and carefully now as we're reaching the top of the head. You can probably see there that I've got a small section that is already got quite a bit of colour on it, so I've caught that on the sides when I've done the sides of the section. So again, I'm just weaving a small section of hair ready to use those as highlights. Taking the tin foil and applying that. Just using a really small amount at the top there, blend that in, and then wrapping the hair, the dry non-coloured hair, into the foil. So just creating a little packet, folding it over bottom to top, and then the sides if you need to. Again, applying another piece of foil here just to ensure it's fully covered up, and then taking the next section. We are nearly there for the back section. So just making sure that you're not getting any snagging here, because it's this top part that's really quite crucial to get as neat as possible, because this is going to be quite visual to people when you're wearing your topper. So you want to try and get the top as neat as possible. So I'm starting from the root, but being mindful of the lace here. Working my way down, maybe a couple of inches, just trying to keep it as level to the rest of the colour that I've done. Little fine strokes to the side. Again, you can use as much of the colour down the hair as you wish. A little bit of a blend. And then we're pretty much near the top now. So again, weaving the pintail comb through. This is another thing you could practice, just weaving. So you're just trying to create little bits of hair basically in a line, but with gaps between them. So you're creating the highlights, if you like, but without having to bleach the hair. I hope I'm explaining myself okay. It is quite tricky to explain. So again, I'm just smudging the root through, just being really careful near the top and near the lace. Tiny weeny little strokes to the back of that last section. And then applying a section of tinfoil and pull that reasonably tightly over the top there. And these are going to be my top highlights from the root. So what I want to ensure is that I'm being very careful when I'm close to the root to finish off this section. And just drawing literally a couple of millimeters from the root, because we still want a little bit of root on even the highlights. We don't want the highlights to, well, I don't want, at least I don't want them to be too obvious. So I have a tiny bit of root there on the top of those blonde sections. And then just smudge that in. And we're going to wrap the dry non-coloured hair into the foil. It's a bit tricky trying to wrap dry hair in a foil because it slips around everywhere. So again, just take your time here, folding that over, making sure the hair's out of the way of any other colour so it doesn't get blotchy, and creating a little packet tucking the hair in there. And that's the back section done. So now I'm going to move on to the side sections and I'll speed up the video a little. Okay, 20 minutes developing time, and now after the 20 minutes I use the gloves again and it's time to wash it off. So I'm just unpinning the unit from the mannequin head. So just ensuring that you maybe put a timer on for your 20 minutes. Usually just check the box dye instructions as well to how long it says. Sometimes human Remy hair will dye a little bit quicker, but I've found you leaving it on to the recommended time usually works. And then bringing it over to the sink, I'm just going to remove all the foil. So just taking your time here, just pulling the foil off nice and gently. So each piece at a time, making sure not to rip any of the hair out. Just nice and steady. So washing the unit, I'm not actually going to shampoo it. I've found again with hair on units, it's better to just make sure you give it a really good rinse. And when you've got out all the foil, you want to be using water that's sort of lukewarm, so not too hot, not too cold. So we've got all the foil out there. I'm holding the unit by the lace at the front with my fingers just in the base. Just running the tap, ensuring that I've got a nice lukewarm. And first of all, I'm just going to dab a little bit of water onto the top and then give the colour a little bit of a massage. Not too roughly here because we don't want to get the hair all tangled, but just a nice little massage of the colour into the hair before I rinse it off. So then using the tap, a little bit more force with the water and starting to rinse the hair out, keeping the unit upright so that I can keep stroking the colour out of the hair. Nice and steady. Whatever you do here, don't mash all the hair together, don't scrub it, because then the hair gets really tangled and we don't want that. We just want to take our time and ensure that we're rinsing out all of the excess colour. Okay, the hair's all clean and the colour's washed out. Have a towel handy, and then we're just going to pat the hair dry. So just covering the hair up and giving it a good pat and just drying all the excess off there, all the excess water. Giving it a good pat down in preparation for the next stage. Okay, I've popped the hair back onto the mannequin, and what you'll need for this next section is your Colour Freedom toner. So here it is out of the box, the Colour Freedom white tones, white formula. You're also going to need your comb, your wide tooth comb, and some strips of tin foil, not too many. And we'll be doing this next section on towel dried hair, so it's still a little bit damp. Okay, so combing the hair through and making sure we've got all tangles out of the hair. This again is really quite important. We don't want any blotches or gathering of the colour. So when you've combed it through, what you're hoping to do here is work with the blonde. So we want to avoid putting the toner on the existing colour that we've just done as much as possible. It's not really going to affect the colour, but you just never know. So try and avoid putting it over the actual colour that you've just done, the rooting. So what I like to do here is take it in sections. Make sure you're wearing your gloves. This gets messy. Okay, and perhaps have a little towel over your kitchen side or something so you don't stain the kitchen side. Take your pintail comb and then just take a section from the top so you can work with that a little bit more carefully. You're probably going to find it difficult to section off the small blonde highlights that you've created, so you have to work the best you can here. Again, it's not a science, it's just through practice, and because we're not highlighting the normal way, we're working with the existing blonde that we separated from the original colour. We just have to be careful how we work it. So I'm just taking small sections at a time, giving it a comb through. Take your toner, put a blob onto your fingertips, and then rub it into your fingertips first before you apply it to the hair. Then apply under and on top, and then stroke and stroke, and just smudge it in a little bit towards the top where the highlights go into the other colour, and then give it a little massage at the bottom, so stroking the toner all the way through the strand of hair, and just keep doing this until you're happy that strand is coated well. And then get your rubbish old comb that you don't mind getting colour on and just comb that through. Lovely. And then on to the next section. So even though this needs to be done with care, it also needs to be done reasonably swiftly. So again, just massaging the colour into the fingertips first, then applying to the bottom of the shaft and the top of the shaft of the hair, just along where the hair is blonde, and pulling the colour through until you're happy it's massaged into the hair, and then comb it through. And this is the process that we do throughout. Now I'm taking the top section, so again I just want to be a little bit more careful. Like I say, it doesn't really matter if you get it on the darker hair because it's not going to do much, but you want to try and be as careful as you can. And under the shaft, over the shaft, and then pull it through the strand of hair. Just massaging it with your fingers and making sure that you're not getting any gloopy bits left. So just giving it a good massage through the shaft of hair. And then taking your comb and giving it a comb through. So you just want to make sure that the strands of hair that you've pulled away to put the toner on are nicely covered. And then the top section, I've just put a bit of foil underneath it. And just taking my last bit from the top there, again, foil underneath it, so we're not getting too much of the toner on the root colour, and repeating the process. And basically we repeat this throughout the whole head. And then when that is all completed, all the way through the head, you can then